Jiraiya is a master storyteller. He's someone with a passion for telling stories, and though only one genre of his stories was ever widely accepted, the fact that his first story, the tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, was well accepted by the Namikaze family validated him as an author. In this story, Jiraiya has had to face his mortality and return to the beginning, reliving every scene of his life with the chance to answer the question, would you do anything different? During this time, he realized how many things he could have done differently, from pulling Orochimaru away from the darkness to trying to save Dan Kato. If hindsight is 2020, then Jiraiya's foresight must also be, since the past and future are now analogous to him. Taking the children of Amegakure home with him, he works in hope that they won't fall to darkness as they had in the past. But not everything may change. Even if Jiraiya is helping the great author retell his story, Jiraiya must be humble in recognizing that there are some things that just can't change. He learned that with Dan. But despite this, he hasn't been letting that get to him. He's trying his best, and because of this, he may soon find himself rewarded. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed, and with that out of the way, let's get into the video. As Jiraiya sat at the table, typing on a typewriter, beside him sat a glass containing a dark brown liquor, and on the opposite side was a cigar resting in an ashtray, gently smoldering, chipping away at the paper on the outside just as much as Jiraiya's mind had been chipping away at the story he was telling. The tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi was a project that had been ongoing for quite some time, about half a year to be sure. The book itself was never a long work, but it was taking him time to write it, as not only did he need to remember the old book, but he needed to rewrite it using new concepts to fix the old things that may have led to it being unpopular and perhaps a touch cliché. Now he was rewriting it again, editing it, reading and writing based on how good or bad he felt a particular point in the story was. At least once, Jiraiya threw out everything he did to start fresh, only to realize that what he had written before and written now was pretty much the same. It was stressful to pour your soul into a story and worry if others would appreciate it, but in the end, Jiraiya calmed himself. This was never about anyone else. This story was intimacy between himself and his characters. He wasn't telling the story others wanted to hear, but the story he wanted to tell, and that was what kept him sane through the editing process. He was not a perfect author, and therefore his work could never be perfect, but he hoped for adequacy, if only for the reason to say, hey, I gave everything I had for this. Jiraiya, focusing hard on his story, tried his best not to let himself be distracted. However, distraction found him soon enough as Tsunade entered the room, holding a glass of bourbon herself. How's the story coming along, she asked. It's still a work in progress, Jiraiya said. I can't help but feel like the main character's missing something important. I can't place my finger on it, he said. I've read your drafts, Tsunade said. It seems perfect to me. Why do you feel the need to keep rewriting it over and over again? Because it's not perfect to me. You can't attain true perfection. Not in this world. I know, Jiraiya said, but in my own sense of perfection, the closest I can come to it. I just know there's something I'm missing and it's driving me crazy. Maybe you just need time away from the story. You know how writer's block goes. It's just like when you forget something important. You try so hard to remember it, but you can't seem to call it to memory. So you need to take some time away from the thought and do something else. When you do, sometimes that thing you forgot comes back to you. I don't know what to do, Jiraiya said. Tsunade pulled his seat away from the table. I know something. Sitting down on the startled man's lap, she wrapped her arms around his shoulders and pressed her lips against his, allowing him to surrender to her. This was everything he'd ever dreamed. The entirety of his life, he desired her to be his. And now, after those long months putting her back together again following Dan's death, she was. Dan. Suddenly, Jiraiya pulled his lips away and looked away from Tsunade. Tsunade sat there in confusion for a bit before heaving a sigh that Jiraiya couldn't place. It was either of disappointment or of frustration, but whichever emotion it wasn't a positive one. She stood up and walked to the door, grabbing her bag. Where are you going? Jiraiya asked. I'm headed out to the market. I need a couple things. Would you mind picking up some things for me? Jiraiya asked. Pepperoni, crackers, and ketchup? The usual? Tsunade asked. Peach tea too, if possible. Tsunade smiled. Sure. If you're gonna be staying here with me, then I might as well keep you comfortable." Stepping outside, she closed the door. It was true. Jiraiya had been staying at the home of Tsunade these past months. It wasn't entirely planned. After Dan passed away, Tsunade was in a funk for a fair few months, and Jiraiya knew that the enemy of healing when you were so hurt was solitude, so he needed to stay with her. In most cases, he'd just hang out with her when he wasn't busy, trying to keep her mind off of it. But as the weeks passed into months, the frequency of his visits, as well as the duration of them, had led to him deciding it was a lot of wasted energy to go home. Tsunade didn't seem to mind. After all, the loss of Dan rent her heart open, and she was desperately trying to fill the gap, whether it be with bad habits such as drinking, or even with Jiraiya himself. And now, as Jiraiya thought about those things, he began to feel as though he had overstepped his bounds, overstayed his welcome. Only recently, parts of this house gave off a similar smell to Dan. Jiraiya was filling a spot that wasn't his, and the more Tsunade grew interested in Jiraiya, the more Jiraiya felt like he was intruding. Even if Dan was dead and Tsunade no longer under the engagement she had once been, there was a subtle guilt to this. Jiraiya was a weak man with desires, and Tsunade was the object of his affections. Far more than a mere woman, she was an angel given human form, descending from the heavenly places with a bow and arrow that had pierced his heart, pinning him to the wall. And despite the fact that he wanted her, and she wanted him, Jiraiya couldn't shake the idea that he wasn't worthy. She had never wanted him before. Why would she want him now? It was obvious to Jiraiya that this was nothing more than Tsunade depending upon him due to her weakness, and now Jiraiya felt as though his love for her was taking advantage of the situation, capitalizing upon tragedy to give him an excuse to have the things he wanted. This was him being selfish. This was wrong. The longer he had lived with her, the more he had grown relaxed. What once had him sleeping on the couch now saw them sharing the same mattress, a mattress that still smelled like Dan. What once saw him returning home to freshen up now saw him using the shower in Tsunade's home, changing into clothes that had now moved into her dresser, a dresser that still had some of Dan's clothes in it. This conflicting feeling only increased when he realized that his favorite snack to eat at night, something he did on a nearly nightly basis, just so happened to be a food Dan enjoyed. Tsunade did not love Jiraiya. Tsunade loved Dan, and Jiraiya right now had become Dan. She was using him as a replacement. Every time they kissed, every time they whispered secrets in each other's ears at night, it wasn't Jiraiya that Tsunade heard. It was Dan. This was what Jiraiya saw, and to a point, his conscience was beginning to ache. That thought he had so long ago when he decided to save Dan, that dark and malignant voice breathing "let him die" in his ear, that had been himself. The part of him that was now living in Tsunade's apartment, claiming another man's treasure like some pirate robbing an honest man. These thoughts, he hadn't told Tsunade, but this was why he couldn't properly write. Every time he'd tried to think of the next step in Naruto's character development, he couldn't help but think about what he had done to Tsunade, what he was doing to her now, and that haunted him. Sitting there in the chair he had now imprinted upon, he continued to ponder these things. Downing the last of his alcohol, he smashed the tip of his cigar against the inside of the ashtray and twisted multiple times to smother the embers within. Standing up, he grabbed his shoes and began to head out into the village as a whole. He attempted to avoid the marketplace as he knew that this was where Tsunade might be. Jiraiya would instead head toward the nearest bar and enter it. Of course, if he were only here to drink, it would have been useless to leave, as Tsunade had a store of spirits so large that should her house ignite, the flames might burn for months. No, he was here because he needed noise. He needed to hear voices chattering and distant music. He wanted to drown out the thoughts in his head, bury them with something else that didn't remind him of his home life, his stolen home life. Finding a table nearby, he ordered a simple beer. Nothing too fancy, nothing too high in alcohol content. It was low fat, low sugar, low alcohol. He was still a shinobi and didn't have the room to recklessly put on weight from yeast, so a simple diet beer was all he could afford in a physical sense. Its taste was best described as something similar to horse piss mixed with marigolds. But then again, he wasn't here to drink, really, so the quality of this bottom-of-the-shelf brand didn't matter. Pulling out his cell phone, he checked his messages. He'd been keeping up with the Ame orphans. They'd halfway inherited Jiraiya's apartment, and all things said, they kept it fairly clean. At least, as clean as younger kids could. Jiraiya handled the bills for them, and they attended the academy. Slowly but surely, their goals were mending. They began to feel like Konoha was the nation closest to seeking peace, and it was no surprise that this was based upon Hiruzen's ideals, which had recently been overtaken by Minato, who had recently been named Hokage. Jiraiya had forgotten how proud of his apprentice he had been. As he checked his messages, he felt something slither up his back, wrapping around his neck. Jiraiya didn't even look at the snake, but continued checking his messages. "You know I'm not a big fan of snakes," Jiraiya said. Slowly, the snake fled like a familiar from his body back to its pale-skinned host. "Sansukumi Ken never was your game, was it?" Orochimaru said with a smile. "May I sit?" "You don't even need to ask," Jiraiya said. Orochimaru sat down. "What brings you to this crappy place?" he asked. "Life. You?" "You did, actually," Orochimaru said. "Me?" Jiraiya questioned. "Yeah, I saw you walking down the street and tried to call out to you, but you didn't hear me. So I followed you in and got sidetracked looking at the pictures of famous shinobi who visited this place. Did you know that Sasuke Sarutobi visited this place once before he passed? There's a picture of him on the wall and he looks so old." "Is there a reason you are following me?" Jiraiya asked. "Yeah. One of my apprentices, Anko, said she heard through the grapevine that your apprentice, Minato, is about to be a father." Jiraiya looked up, having forgotten it was so close. "Oh, yeah." "You knew?" Orochimaru asked. No, I just heard a rumor too." "Turns out it's not a rumor," Orochimaru said. "I called up Minato to ask him about it, and he informed me that indeed, he and Kushina are pregnant." Jiraiya smiled. "I'm glad for them." "You don't really seem like yourself," Orochimaru said. "Normally you're chipper and an optimist. Why are you so down in the dumps today?" "Just some personal stuff. I'd prefer not to talk about it." "Trouble in paradise?" Orochimaru asked, raising his brows twice with a knowing smile. Jiraiya just shook his head, rolling his eyes. "Don't call it that. It's just a personal issue, and I'd prefer not to think about it." Orochimaru pulled back on his insistence and joke-making. It was apparently fairly serious to Jiraiya, and he didn't want to talk about it, so Orochimaru knew it was time to let the joke go. "I understand, then." Jiraiya then took a sip of his dollar store beer and almost gagged. "I see why nobody bothers to buy this crap. It's atrocious." "Wasn't that stuff recalled?" Orochimaru asked. Jiraiya looked up with surprise. He then pushed the beer away. "That reminds me," Orochimaru said. "Minato actually asked if you could go over to his house. He wanted to talk to you." "Why didn't he call me?" Jiraiya asked. "I suppose it's something he wants to talk about personally." Jiraiya understood. "Then maybe I should go." Jiraiya put some money on the table, enough for his drink and to buy Orochimaru something. Walking past, he put his hand on the old white snake's shoulder. "Stay in contact, oh man." Orochimaru raised a thumb up and then called for a waiter. As Jiraiya stepped out into the warm summer heat, he could feel the sun bearing down on him intensely. Walking past the academy, he saw the Ame trio still working. They, along with the rest of their class, were outside for physical exercise. The oppression of the sun and the constricting nature of the heat and humidity had kicked every single one of their rears, leaving them all prone and gasping. Walking past them, he made his way to the Namikaze household. Knocking on the door, Kushina opened up with a smile. "Jiraiya, come on in," she said. Jiraiya stepped in. Looking at Kushina, he began to wonder how it was a question that she was pregnant. She was already showing. "I heard you and Minato were about to be blessed with a child. I'm pleased to hear the rumors were true. Congratulations, Kushina. I've got no doubts in your strength and ability to fulfill your duties as a mother." Kushina beamed a smile. "Oh, thanks, Jiraiya. That means so much to me." Walking past, she spoke. "I think Minato's in the baby's room. You can go on up." Hugging the woman like she were his daughter, and in some ways, if Minato were like his son, then she would be like a daughter indeed, Jiraiya would walk up the stairs. There were many doors, and all but one was closed. Entering the room, he saw it was colored in soft yet neutral colors. The room had been decorated in such a way as to be a bit ambiguous to the gender of the child, which Minato and Kushina likely didn't know. Despite that, intuition had taken over, and there were subtle hints that the child might be male due to some of the toys that had been picked out. As Jiraiya looked around, Minato was still trying to put the crib together, his tongue sticking slightly out of the corner of his mouth as his gaze was directed toward the instructions below, while his hand was screwing two pieces of the frame together. It was obvious that the poor boy didn't know what he was doing. "Here, let me help you with that." Jiraiya looked over the instructions. "All right, you're doing this backward.
This part goes on the other side in an inverted position.
How can you tell? Minato asked.
See this bar on the frame? It's on the opposite side.
Minato gazed at it carefully and then looked back and forth at the object that could not yet be called a crib and the piece of paper below him. Oh, I get it now. Oh, I'm such an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot. You're just mentally challenged.
With his help, they were slowly making progress. As they worked, they talked.
So, did you get a chance to take a look at the rough draft I sent you?
Rough draft?
You know, Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi.
Minato smiled with realization. That was just a rough draft? I thought it was great.
Tsunade said that too, but I still feel like something's missing.
Like what? Minato asked.
Jiraiya shook his head. I don't know. Something important to his character. It's missing. I just don't know what it is.
Minato let out a thin sigh as he thought. I can't really help you.
Not that creative. Have you seen the names of your custom techniques? There's no way they'd have such crazy names if you weren't creative.
Minato chuckled. Perhaps, but I'm not a novelist. I can't tell you what would or wouldn't make the story better. All I know is that I loved the story. I read it to Kushina and she loved it too. Said the main character was awe-inspiring and that she hoped that our child grows up to be like Naruto. Jiraiya nodded.
I'm sure he will.
He? Minato asked.
Or she, I guess. You never know,
Jiraiya threw out there, trying to catch himself. It could be a she, Minato said. But for some reason, I can't shake that it's a he. I didn't tell Kushina, but I bought some clothes for the baby already. I bought it in the color blue.
Well, I noticed a few toys in the basket over there are geared more towards boys as well. Was that you or her?
That might have been her. I didn't even really know they made baby toys for different genders. They all looked the same to me. As they continued to work, Jiraiya spoke.
So, what did you call me here for?
Huh?
What did you and Kushina call me here to say that you couldn't say over the phone? Orochimaru said you wanted to say something to me.
Oh, yeah. That, Minato said. Can we stop for a second? He asked as he set the frame down. Jiraiya already assumed what was going to be said, but he decided to act surprised. Minato then spoke. Me and Kushina were talking and, being the Hokage is a dangerous job. So many people are after you. And with Kushina being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, Minato trailed off. Jiraiya remained silent, his gaze drifting between each of Minato's eyes as he spoke. Minato smiled a touch. It should be such a happy thing, Having a baby, I mean. But despite that, we've been feeling anxious.
It's gonna be fine, Minato. You and Kushina will do great. There are classes you can attend.
I know that. I'm not worried about that. I'm talking about death. Jiraiya remained quiet. This seemed like something very hard for Minato to talk about, so he would save his commentary until the end so as to make Minato feel better. To validate his feelings as opposed to making him feel weak. Just yesterday, I took out a life insurance policy on myself. 1 million ryo should something happen to me outside of suicide. I just can't help but think that death is coming for us. Maybe I'm just being crazy, but I feel like death is sneaking up. I'm probably just being paranoid, Minato giggled. But still, I feel afraid. Minato nodded, his face showing a subtle smile, though his tears were beginning to shine. One blink later, 2 tears streaked down his face like twin shooting stars. Jiraiya gently pulled Minato into a hug. I'm sorry, Minato said. I shouldn't be like this. This is a happy time, and I'm jumping at shadows.
It's okay, Minato, Jiraiya said. Having a baby's a lot more stressful than people want to admit. And sometimes, worst case, our own hyperactive minds tend to focus on things we shouldn't worry about. It's part of being human.
Jiraiya wished he could deny the fears Minato was having, but the future lay bare before him. He knew that this was less a fit of paranoia and more a premonition, but he couldn't tell Minato that. If the future was now open for him to change things, then he would do his best to ensure that Minato didn't have to die. There were many things Jiraiya regretted about his previous run through life. The first was that he wasn't there for Naruto early enough when he was needed most. And the second thing was that he wasn't there for Minato either. It was better for Minato to be there for Naruto rather than Jiraiya himself, which is why it was important for him to rescue Minato and Kushina now. They needed to live for Naruto's sake.
Is that what you wanted to tell me?
Jiraiya asked. Minato, pulling back, wiped his face. No, it's actually not. Me and Kushina read your book, and we loved it so much that we decided to name our child after the main character.
Naruto? You sure that's wise? I just came up with it while eating lunch one day. Kids might make fun of him. Are you certain?
Jiraiya didn't actually want to change Minato's mind. He had called Naruto Naruto for so long that he couldn't think of anything else but that, but he needed to show proper apprehension to ensure that everything stayed logical. Minato would nod his head and agree. Kushina said that the name was cute, given by a wise man and held by a courageous boy. But further, she said it served as a perfect way to honor her now defunct village. Uzoshiogakure is gone, and there are now few people besides Nagato who carry the clan name. When Naruto's born, I'm actually considering having him take the Uzumaki clan name so that the Uzumaki doesn't die out.
That's a very mature decision, Minato. Selfless.
I'm glad you think so, Minato said. I wanted to say one last thing.
Lots of big news today, isn't it?
Jiraiya said with a chuckle.
What is it?
Minato looked down for a moment before speaking. Bowing his head slightly to honor his mentor, he spoke. Will you do us the honor of being the godfather of our child? I know it might be silly to think that we're going to die so close to the birth of our baby, but I need to know that everything is going to be okay, even if we do die. So will you watch over our child in the event of our untimely death? Jiraiya put his hands on Minato's shoulder and helped raise him up.
I would have done so anyway, Minato.
Minato looked as though he might cry again, leading to the two hugging. Minato smiled. Thank you, Jiraiya. This means a lot to us.
Your child is going to be part of the family, and this family's special to me. I feel like a grandfather, honestly. I'll always watch over it for you, just as much as I watch out for you and Kushina. So don't let the future scare you. I've faced death many times, and I've been given gifts due to these things. I'm gonna use them to ensure that you and your wife get to raise your own baby, okay?
Minato nodded his head. And so they began to work some more on the crib, putting each piece together. Kushina would often bring up drinks and refreshments for them to keep them going, and by the time they'd finished, the sun had already set, with only a light pink resting on the horizon against the purple background and sound of crickets. Looking at their handiwork, the two felt proud of their accomplishment, even if it was small. Finding a place to sit in the living room, they continued their conversations. It was then that a text came on Jiraiya's phone. Looking at it, he saw it was from Tsunade. It said, "When you coming home? Ooh." He texted back, "Soon. Hanging with Minato. Give me 20. Kissy face." "Who's that from?" Minato asked.
"Oh, it's from Tsunade,"
Jiraiya said, putting his phone back in his pocket. "Are you two doing okay? Word's spreading that you guys are basically living together now." Jiraiya grunted. He couldn't deny the rumor, but he hated that it was spreading around town, as if it were anyone else's business. A bit of silence passed before Jiraiya spoke.
"I actually need to ask you something."
Minato was surprised. "Ask me?" Jiraiya nodded.
"I instructed you when you were younger, and I take some pride in thinking maybe I might have had some responsibility in who you grew up to be. But now you're older and wiser, and I need someone like that to help me out."
"Of course, anything." Jiraiya then spoke.
"It's about me and Tsunade. This past half year, things have developed between us."
"Congratulations," Minato said with a smile. "You both deserve to be happy."
"That's the thing, though. I don't know if I do make her happy, and I'm not happy."
"I don't follow. Didn't you always love her?" Jiraiya nodded.
"Yeah, I did."
"Then what's the problem?" Minato asked.
"I don't know if she really loves me, and I don't know if I deserve her. It's no secret that she was emotionally destroyed by Dan's unexpected death. I helped her put the pieces of her life back together, and during that time I felt as though she
bounced back with you?" Jiraiya was silent for a moment before nodding.
"She's never loved me before. Only recently has she begun to, and I think it's because she's inadvertently using me to fill the hole in her heart after the death of Dan."
Minato thought about it. Tsunade is a strong and independent woman, but she has vices and bad habits too. Coping mechanisms.
"On top of that," Jiraiya continued, "I feel like I'm stepping into another man's territory."
"Dan's dead. He can't marry or date Tsunade anymore."
"I know that," Jiraiya said, "but the thing that bothers me is that I feel like I'm betraying Dan's memory. I so easily slid in and replaced him, like he was nothing, like he was never alive. I took the tragedy of his death and used it as an excuse to usurp his spot in her heart, and every time she kisses me, I can't stop seeing him in my head, looking at me with anger and disappointment."
Minato nodded. "I see." Jiraiya looked to his student, who had now become the master.
"What do I do?"
Minato repositioned himself in his seat, calling upon all the wisdom he could muster. "What you do isn't up to me, nor should it be based upon what I think. This is between you and Tsunade. The person you need to talk to about this is her. Explain what you're feeling and learn what she's feeling. And if you feel as though it's not healthy for you two, then you both need to be mature and let go.
That's gonna be one of the hardest things I can do, Jiraiya said. For so many years, I craved to have her. I wanted her. My heart may have flown to other women for comfort, but it beat for her, and only her. And now you're asking me to take the one woman I love most and let her go?
I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not telling you to do anything. But obviously, to me, listening to you speak, it sounds like she's still not yours. But you know that already, and that's why your conscience is hurting. Her heart belongs to someone else, and you feel like a thief, a corpse looter. That's why you're feeling this way. You're not anything like that, of course. I'm merely interpreting your feelings for you. But one thing I do know is that this is a dilemma between you and her. Have you talked to her about it? Minato asked. Jiraiya shook his head. Then that's the first step. Talk to her about it. If you do, the answer you're searching for might become clear.
What if the answer ends up with me having to let her go?
Minato sat forward and put his hand on Jiraiya's knee. Love is hard because love is selfless. It doesn't think about itself, but about others. If you love her, then you may be asked to do the hard thing and let her go. But remember, if she comes back to you, she's yours. So just be brave, Master. Tell her all that's on your mind, on your heart. And if it's something that sets you and her apart, then be apart. But if it doesn't, then you can stay with her, and you can know that she's meant to be yours. Jiraiya nodded and then stood, Minato rising just behind him.
All right, I'll do that. Thanks, Minato.
And with that, Jiraiya disappeared into the night. Making it back to the house, he stepped in to see Tsunade on the couch. She stood up and walked over to him. Welcome home, she said as she wrapped her arms around him and pressed her lips against his. Jiraiya pulled away again. She looked at him with confusion. What's wrong? She asked with a slight bit of frustration in her voice. Every time we get a little intimate, you suddenly close off from me. She walked back to the living room and sat down. Jiraiya followed her in.
We need to have a talk, Sue.
Oh boy, she said as she reached down and lifted a bottle of scotch from the coffee table and began to down it. Those words have never ended well, she said. Jiraiya admitted that was true, but that was no reason that he could not start this conversation. He needed to be brave.
I can't latch on,
he said. She stood there and listened. Latch on? To what?
You.
Tsunade's face twisted into a confused grimace. What's that mean?
It means something isn't right. Listen, I know you're probably feeling emotionally vulnerable and stuff, but I'm not done.
Tsunade sat there silently, but her face was slowly growing redder.
Every time I'm with you, feeling these things, doing these things, I can't help but feel like a poacher. I know he's passed on, but even still, I feel like a thief because I feel like you're using me to fill a hole in your heart, and that's perfectly fine.
Using you to fill a hole in my heart? You think I'm doing that? Jiraiya didn't know how to answer. That's exactly what he thought she was doing, but he couldn't say it now since it seemed to anger her.
Well,
you think I'm using you to get over Don? You think I'd dishonor his memory in that way? You think I'd dishonor you like that?
Sue, calm down. The neighbors will hear.
Screw the neighbors. She drew closer. After everything that's happened, you say this to me. Jiraiya was starting to get agitated too.
You were broken, he said. I was nice to you and tried to put you back together again. I did everything I could to heal your broken heart, and it felt like you were stuck in denial, that Don was gone. You don't realize it, but a couple nights ago, you called me Don.
Is that what messed you up? That was an accident, a habit.
It woke me up. Your heart is still on him, but you're living with me now, and I know you're in love with someone else. Relationships don't move this fast. People don't heal this fast, he shouted.
And who do you think you are right now, Dr. Freud? You think you know people well enough to know when they're healed and when they're not?
Yes, I've lived a long time, seen things you can't even imagine, done things you've never thought possible. I've learned how people work. I know that you're still wounded, and because your heart's feeling hollow, it eats you up. You need to fill it, and you chose me, and I let you because I love you.
He stopped as soon as he said that. Tsunade sat down on the couch silently and covered her face. Jiraiya took a deep breath and knelt down next to her.
Sue, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. I don't want you to be hurt, and I'm worried that if we keep this up, you'll never truly heal, and it'll be my fault. What kind of friend would I be if I let that happen to you?
Friend? She questioned. Jiraiya nodded. She shook her head. Get out, she said.
Get out?
Jiraiya questioned. She pointed to the door. Get out. Jiraiya was stunned for a moment, but what more could he have expected? Turning around, he walked to the door and stopped. Looking back once more, he went to speak again, but she threw the bottle of scotch at him. I said get out! Jiraiya opened the door and stepped out, slamming the door behind him unintentionally, knocking a picture frame off the wall. The picture was of the Sannin, and running along the glass, right down between Jiraiya and Tsunade, was a crack. As she picked the picture up and looked at it, tears began to spill from her eyes. Dumbass. Jiraiya walked the streets. There were a few people outside wandering around, heading toward the more party-filled district. Jiraiya, alone now, stopped into a general store and bought a 12-pack of beer. Finding a bench, he sat down on it and pulled one free from the box. Looking at the bottle in his hand, he popped the top and sat there, drinking from it slowly. 1 bottle, 2 bottle, 4. By the time he started his 6th, he was sufficiently drunk, but even with his brain swimming in a pickle jar, he couldn't stop thinking about everything. By this time, it was very late, and all the shops nearby had closed down. Nothing but the street lamps lit the area up. If he were thinking straight, paranoia would tell him that someone could so easily be watching him from the shadows, coming to gut him. But at this point, he didn't care. He welcomed it even. For someone who had kissed death, he began to believe that such a cruel mistress was the only woman for him.
Why? He asked. Why did you write my story this way? Am I just born to always be alone? He questioned. Is this just fate? Something that can't be changed? Just as Dawn always dies, I always end up alone. I should have been the one to die that day. I wish I had.
Throwing the mostly full bottle away in anger, it shattered against a light pole, spilling broken glass and yellow liquid everywhere. That was when he heard a familiar voice. Do you mind if I have a drink with you? He looked up and saw Tsunade standing there.
Free country, he said with a notable slur to his speech.
Tsunade walked over and sat down on the bench with him, the case of beer beside them. Taking one out, she popped the cap on the metal armrest of the bench and began to drink. She looked at him for a second before looking back down at the ground. What you said today, it hurt me, she said. Jiraiya scoffed.
Like it was a walk in the park for me? He asked.
Tsunade sighed again. It was wrong. Mostly. Jiraiya's eyes darted to the side for a moment before straightening out. You're right about one thing, she said. I'm hurt. Dawn's death still hasn't healed entirely. I cling to old habits. I say things. I sometimes even dream about him still. And you're right, a couple nights ago I called you Dawn. There are just some scars that are stubborn. But the thing that hurt was that you said I was just holding on to you to replace Dawn. I'm not. I would never do that to you, or Dawn.
I don't understand how it could be anything else, Jiraiya said. You had love, lost it, and desperately tried to find it again. You never loved me before. Why else would you start now if not to replace Dawn?
Whoever told you I never loved you?
Your fists, he said. You shattered my ribcage once.
You were watching me bathe. That's different.
What changed? We live together now.
We still live together, she said. Looking up at the sky, she spoke. There was something I never told you. Jiraiya looked at her for a moment and then followed her gaze up to the stars. Do you remember where you got the name for your book's main character, she asked.
From that fox pup that passed away in our care. I remember, he said.
Tsunade continued. I was devastated and you pulled me back up. Orochimaru, he was destroyed. You, though, even though we could tell you hurt, you put it all aside for us. Jiraiya remained silent. Tsunade continued. I saw you the next day, by the graves of Orochimaru's parents. I heard what you said, the way you treated him. I saw that. It stuck with me forever. I still think about it. In that moment, so deep in my youth, you became my first crush, though I never spoke about it because I was afraid of being made fun of. Love was new. It was scary. So I hid it, buried it, pretended it wasn't there, and eventually I forgot about it. Then when you offered to stay behind with those children, even though I was upset that you left us, I couldn't help but think about those things. Then when Tsunade slowed and gathered herself together, when Dawn died, I died too. My heart was ripped out, shattered, destroyed. All of the things in my heart were laid bare, and you were there. You picked up the pieces I had no strength to search for, and you put me back together. I sometimes think I'm only alive now because of you. The things I had thought of you before culminated in those acts of kindness, that you would do something for me, and in a moment, my heart was set ablaze. I didn't love you to replace Dawn. I could never replace Dawn with anyone, and I would never want to. But you, your love made me love you. Not just after Dawn died, but long before it. Maybe I am weak, and maybe I am coping. I don't know, but I do know one thing for certain. I have a heart, shattered and broken, but still good. It's all I have, and I have nobody to give it to save the boy who sacrifices everything to help others, who so selflessly sacrifices himself for the desires of others. And maybe it was stupid, but I had hoped that in some way I might repay that boy, that I might give him something of mine, to let him know it's okay to be happy, to be selfish every once in a while. Moving the case of beer, she slid closer to him. Jiraiya, I don't know everything about my emotions and my heart in the time since Dawn died, but I do know this. I deeply, madly love you. How could I have ever expected to be so blessed that I would meet two men and they both became the loves of my life? So please, don't let me go because you think you're stealing something that is Dawn's. My heart's mine to give, not Dawn's, and shattered as it may be, if I must, I will divide it evenly between the two of you. Dawn isn't here anymore, but you are, and so am I. Is it so wrong that we might be in love? I don't think so, and neither would Dawn. He was never selfish. He always did his best to make me and others happy, just as you do. And I know, if there was any man he would approve to have me, if not he himself, it would be you. So please, Jiraiya, let go of your worries. Let it all go. And there they kissed. At this time, once again, Jiraiya saw Dawn's face in his mind as he kissed Tsunade. But this time, he wasn't scowling or uttering a curse from beyond the grave. Instead, it was a smile and a blessing. They continued to live together, and even as Tsunade continued to heal, her feelings for Jiraiya never once changed or wavered. If anything, they grew stronger. Then came the night that Minato and Kushina were to have their baby. It was Minato's wish that Jiraiya would be there as the godfather, and that Tsunade, being the best doctor in all of Konoha, would be the one to deliver the baby. This was a special and magical night. Two lovers, bound by a vow, held each other hand in hand as the culmination of their love produced something more. Something miraculous. That's all Jiraiya could think as he sat in a chair, looking away from the scene. "Keep breathing, Ku," Tsunade said. "You're doing great. Now take a deep breath and push." Kushina did as told. Letting out a cry, she stopped again to catch her breath. Tsunade spoke. "I see ahead. Blonde hair like his dad." "Dear mercy, I hope he's not as annoying," she said, drawing a laugh from Kushina. "Breathe again and push," Tsunade said. Kushina began to take quick, heavy heaves of oxygen before screaming like a warrior. And in that moment, her voice silenced for the voice of another. A tiny voice, crying. Jiraiya couldn't help but smile, tears rolling down his cheeks. His student, the child of prophecy, had finally returned to his life. "All right, Dad, you know what to do," she said, handing him the scissors. At about that time, Jiraiya saw a shadow outside the doorway. He stood. Tsunade moved her body in front of Kushina better. "Pervert," Tsunade said. "Sit down."
"Shut up," Jiraiya said. "There's someone here."
Swaddling the baby and handing it to Kushina, Minato and Tsunade took a step in front of Kushina.
"Come out right now,"
Jiraiya said, his eyes turning to the same pupils as that of a toad, his nose fattening and becoming varicose.
"There's no use hiding. I can sense you're there with Sage Mode."
From there, out of the shadows, a man appeared. His mask a swirl of tiger stripes, a long black cloak over his shoulders. "I guess the jig's up." Tsunade then spoke. "Lord Forth, get your wife and son out of here. Protect them at all costs. You can't let this person get to the Nine Tails. I can't leave you two to face him alone."
"Listen to your doctor," Tsunade said. "We're strong. We can handle this. Just protect your family."
Minato begrudgingly agreed and teleported them out with his flying Raijin technique. From there, the figure began to fight. His goal was gone, but where they had gone he did not know. He'd hoped to escape, but not before he took his revenge on the two greatest shinobi in the village. Jiraiya in Sage Mode and Tsunade with her strength of 100 seal, they proceeded to work together to fight this guy, but the longer they fought, the more they came to realize that their attacks weren't working. "I don't know what it is, but this guy has a strange jutsu that's protecting him. He only becomes tangible right before he attacks," Tsunade said.
"Then that's when we have to attack,"
Jiraiya said. Readying a Rasengan, he and Tsunade continued the fight. Jiraiya would, when out of sight, substitute himself for a shadow clone to confuse the man. They let him think that he had the upper hand, and just as he went to strike them down, Jiraiya spewed flames upon his Rasengan. Using his fire release, Great Flame Rasengan, he struck the man in the back, setting him ablaze in an inferno that seemed to burn him to ashes. No doubt this was the man who killed Minato and Kushina, Jiraiya thought. Knowing he'd defeated him brought Jiraiya peace. This night was more than just special because of that, though. Moved by the moment, it was here that Jiraiya decided to pop the question. He asked Tsunade if she would marry him. Her answer was a yes indeed, and within a few months, they married. And not long after, within a year of trying, despite getting to the end of her years of fertility, Tsunade conceived with Jiraiya, and the two named the child Koji. The name was chosen by Jiraiya, who felt as though he had been blessed with a second chance. And finally, as he sat down to write again, he realized what the story was missing. Taking inspiration from his Icha Icha novels, he wrote in a love interest for Naruto. And upon reading it again, Jiraiya felt as though the story was complete. This book would become a bestseller all across the civilized world, and the works of Jiraiya would be treasured parts of the village's history. And that's where I'm gonna call it. This story is one I really love to write. Getting to explore Jiraiya's life from the perspective of a man who has already seen its outcome was a real pleasure, and ranks as one of my favorite what-ifs. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you did, let me know in the comments what you thought. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when more videos like this drop. And if you just can't wait for those, check out these other videos here. I'm sure you'll love them. Anyway, until next time, peace out.